with deep reverence and deep regards to Professor Tandon, my teacher and teacher of many cardiologists and pediatric cardiologists, a father figure of pediatric cardiology of India, I accept this invitation. Respected chairpersons and dear friends, I'm truly humbled and privileged to have received this invitation, and I suspect it has more to do with affection that colleagues have for me than my abilities. When I was with some trepidations, I was wondering what may I speak about that oration. It occurred to me that I have thought a little, I have taught a little, and I have wrote a little, but I have seen a lot. I have seen sea of humanity, and I guess I thought I will speak about that for this oration. Practicing pediatric cardiology in India, as this famous Renaissance painter Amrita Shergill told once, leave Europe to Picasso, India belongs to me. And she went on painting anonymous, simple, common Indians, and she fell in love with them. And I dare say, I fell in love with my kith and kin too. The common faceless Indian, the resourceless Indian, the Indian who is apparently looking so simple. But if you dig deep, these are our kith and kin. There is nothing more to say. And these are our children. The character of a society is judged by the way it treats its children, the most vulnerable. And we know that we have a job at our hand. These oft repeated slides tell us the magnitude of problem. Despite tenfold progress in last 2 decades, we have still miles to go. And we talk of their suffering. And they suffer from the disease. There is a suffering from the treatment. And there is suffering from dysfunction of delivery systems, from the chaos, confusions, and delays. And we have a stake in all the 3 of them. And we talk of delivery care systems. We have high expertise in public and private, but the question of access, equity, and accountability cannot be disregarded. A successful practice of pediatric cardiology does include access, equity, and accountability. When I think about that, and with the rest of the comments which I will make pertains to these aspects, the younger generation might find some academic insights into those. But when a common Indian mazes through all these delivery systems and reaches us, he reaches far too late. And unless you have seen those cases, your understanding of human response to disease is not complete. You might just be mistaken for taking small things like muscular obesity or technomaladies as a disease. Whereas you see the rheumatic heart disease in a 3-year-old, in a 7-year-old, this is the first episode of rheumatic heart disease giving devastating diseases. And for example, this is in an adult where it is masqueraded as a LV tumor, which on biopsy was shown full of SF nodules. So rheumatic fever is not gone, it is forgotten. The space has been usurped by more fancy technologies of devices, and a lot remains to be done on that front. And we talk of juvenile mitral stenosis. We oft repeated that it is the result of repeated rheumatic activity, belying the fact that most of the time they do not give any history of rheumatic fever. 90% of juvenile mitral stenosis do not have recurrent rheumatic fever. So this our paradigm which we repeat that recurrent rheumatic fever is the problem is only half truth. There are several host factors which you have not yet understood. And some of them you can do PTMC because they were only under the drape. They are so small that you could not even use a balloon. We were the first to report about 100 cases of that earlier on the life. 1-year-old with such a pseudoaneurysm that defies imagination, which was of course plugged. A 7-year-old with a discrete neat cut at the LVA because of Takayasu arteritis. A massive aneurysm compressing pulmonary artery and coronary arteries tackled by our surgeons. I'm not particularly fond of aneurysms, but these show the degree of difficulties that we face in our population. A pyopericardium for which we pioneered streptokinase, a tuberculoma which is intracardiac, and a dangerous, devastating Takayasu involving all the 4 vessels causing ischemic optic neuroatrophy. And a severe PS for which we pioneered twice graded balloon dilatations. Otherwise, they go into pulmonary edema. Most people would not have seen such cases. Devastating Eisenmenger syndromes that you see on daily basis, and cardiomyopathies, EMF, etc. And severe cyanotic heart disease, which also we see on daily basis. Some of these are gut-wrenching experiences, which we tend to get used to when we talk of statistical, the patient become cases. But on the other hand, their fight against all odds, their resilience and their dignity in face of suffering is almost transcendental. If you are academically inclined, when you see hundreds of patients, you do come across rarities like lymphangiomatous, Gorham's disease involving recurrent hemorrhagic pericardial effusions, absent IVC, with unhealing ulcers on the leg, completely absent IVCs. You dare have not seen such cases. And we put some stem cells there off label. A case of a veno-occlusive disease or a pulmonary capillary hemangiomatous, these are the first reports in Indian literature. CTEPH in a 4-year-old. Bilateral peripheral pulmonary artery stenosis. This is the one where I lost bet to Ramakrishna and Dr. Saurabh, because this also turned out to be a CTEPH. Earlier in my life, 20 years ago, I did not know what is Abernethy syndrome, and I did report an abstract in Indian Heart Journal about 12 cases of unidentified pulmonary AV fistulas, very, very blue children. One of them came back after 2 years when a completely blue child became totally pink, but this time with PH. And this is a rare occurrence of a natural history of Abernethy syndrome, not very well known. Now, he told me that he was on Ayurvedic treatment. I wish I can recall him and get him and find out what was the treatment and do some evidence-based therapy for that. Abernethy syndrome remains a little step with me because I forgot, I did not know, and I mistreated a couple of them decades earlier. So when I got these first 2 children with a similar shot on the ear and both of having same anatomy, I promptly pushed this sign as a visualization of Abernethy syndrome, a treatable condition. And when you find a PH, a blue child, but with wild pulse pressure, it's a delight. When you know the echo is normal, it's a delight to identify vein of Galen malformation. You will be right 90% of the time. So also there is a beriberi in our own part of the country, which is described as a wide pulse pressure with PH in some parts of the country from Bangalore and Srinagar, as you would know. This is a gift to me from Dr. Tandon. He taught me as a student, as long as mitral stenosis is severe, you can operate. And we did operate it on people with otherwise blue cyanosed Eisenmenger syndrome with a VST and a PDA, going by his word only, and we didn't regret. Not many people would have done that. People would have gone for stages, but his conviction was superb. And I just followed that. Little did I realize that there is not much in the literature by way of this confirmation. And I was happy that we could contribute in these 2 cases. EMF remains unknown disease. In 1993, I published a biopsy-proven eosinophilic myocarditis. And that child 20 years later came with a florid EMF, unmistakable EMF. And I've seen this twice. So that for me, eosinophilia is the cause of EMF. I've seen this 5 times. I could document it only once. And this actually also tells why it is decreasing in Kerala, because the eosinophilia, as the socioeconomic improvement has occurred, eosinophilia is becoming less and there is less of EMF. Be that as it may, when it comes to common disease, we day in, day out talk of tetralogies, and we have literally treated thousands of tetralogy, and we have definitely found variations of AV canal and Hoffman's variant, and TOF with epi window, with LPA from aorta, isolated subclavian aortic arteritis, subclavian artery from in TOF, Epstein anomalies, hypertrophic cardiomyopathies, various arch anomalies. In fact, it has been my staple diet with Dr. Balram to catheterize the case in the morning, and he will operate in the afternoon, and we have done thousands and thousands of that actually. But what is surprising is, beyond the anatomy, when I show this X-ray to resident, none of them will pick up a tuberculosis in TOF. Whether tuberculosis is more common with cyanotic heart disease remains an unsolved question. Most of these infarcts are treated by pediatricians, recurrent pneumonias, which is endocarditis. There is a huge volume of endocarditis in cyanotic heart disease, not very well recognized. And there is a tremendous morbidity, CNS morbidities, mortalities with TOF cyanotic heart disease. Uncharacterized connection between hypoxia and CNS thrombosis needs some more research. Anemia and EAT are well-known heart failure in TOF. But what is more interesting is this patient with cardiomegaly, and after a BT shunt, his cardiomegaly decreased. He has severe LV dysfunction. His LVEF is 22% based on hypoxia alone. When does hypoxia is the cause of LV dysfunction? When it is not a cause of LV dysfunction, is not very clear. And my personal sense is because of the steep hemoglobin dissociation curve, when it touches below 50, hypoxia itself becomes a part of LV dysfunction. Now, I am prone to hypothesize, and I did hypothesize that in presence of calcium, hypocalcemia, this becomes more of an issue, so that you don't see it so commonly. And when you are young, you are romantic, and you did write some hypothesis, and it dawns on you that an ounce of fact is more than tons of hypothesis. Nevertheless, I think the sense of wonderment must continue, and we must keep on hypothesizing. And you see some revelations that we saw tetralogy with tricuspid stenosis, but when they had rheumatic heart disease in TOF, it was a tricuspid valve, attesting to the fact that it is the wall stress across the valve which causes stenosis. So it was very encouraging that, very clarifying that in TOF with rheumatic heart, we found TS twice. Unfortunately, practicing in India, you don't keep records as you would have liked. Thrombocytopenia and cyanotic heart disease less well understood. Patient with platelet counts of 10 to 20,000, denied surgery elsewhere, and we could operate and lay down a point that thrombocytopenia in cyanotic heart disease will improve with surgery. This is a tragic occurrence, most tragic occurrence, but I would just bring it to your light that you coil embolized, knowing by experts that spinal artery is an issue, Somehow or the other, the child developed a quadriparesis, which is recovering, but these are the part of our life and our day-to-day existence. What do you do when a patient walks in with this thing and says he coughed out and brings out this BT shunt in his hand, that this is he coughed out in the morning, a BT shunt and 10 years earlier, and his CT is perfectly fine. Whosoever said that facts are stranger than fiction? Or you see this child operated elsewhere, when he improved with the surgery, when the BT shunt was done to the vein. Or you have this patient which you are catheterizing and he crashes on the table and the OT is not available. And you take out blood from the pulmonary artery and put it in the aorta for 20 minutes till the surgery could be arranged, and he survives and goes home. These are parts of our daily existence. We don't have much of LV devices, and we don't have very costly technologies. So when you have immunosuppression in DCM and you find a result like this, you are really happy. Unfortunately, which are those patients which will respond? Which are those? How to select? Needs a multicentric trial. I, for one, have failed, but I think the younger generations, now we have just begun to get into the multicentric trial. I'm sure we can answer this. It is erroneous to say that the literature is clear that immunosuppression should not be done. Literature is not clear, and immunosuppression may be of use in certain patients of dilated cardiomyopathy. When it comes to research, my only thought would be that when the tree is on fire, you don't count the mangoes. This is an apology, but we have still managed to do some clinical research. Earlier days, before sildenafil, we did graded balloon septostomy for IPH. In our institute, we have extended the outer limit of ASO by various means. We have done some studies on borderline operability. Sildenafil for PH, we were the first one in the world literature, almost the second or third, not the first. Beta blockers for VSTs, heart and malnutrition, some PTMCs, some interventional pediatric cardiologists, some homemade coils, Takayasu interventions, streptokinase for pyopericardium, RSD epidemiologies, and some cases. But my favorites are case reports because they do teach even in pediatric cardiology. So when you find a patient like this 60-year-old who had ASD, and we did not close this ASD, and she's doing very well because we probably did not close the ASD, and we put an epicardial pacemaker in a carotid transposition without any other structural disease. Or I think this is a typical Indian patient who was operated in 2007. In 2018, his LV was giving up. There was a thrombus at the apex. It was very poor, so I called the family and tried to counsel. And then the mother said, yes, very well, but he's getting married next month, and we have published the wedding cards. I said, this is not done. She said, we called the girl, we told their parents, and we explained to them that child may not survive. And the lady says, no matter what, if he dies tomorrow, I'm going to marry him. And I have heard only the Savitri legend in the past, but this is the one which came through. The patient went on to have a child by 2 years, and he got a heart transplant and is doing very well. So optimism remains our moral duty, this victory of mind over matter sometimes. And there are wins and losses. There are patients whom I said no to pregnancy, and she came back telling me that this is the child you thought I would be dead, and she went on to produce another child. It would be blasphemy on this platform to suggest that a couple of pregnancies I did encourage despite PH, and she is now 22-year-old and is thankful to me. And there have been a patient who obstinately did not agree for a PTMC and went on telling that you will save me, I know. She died, but she gave the birth to a child, and this is the kind of patient which really makes you humble. And for once, for 30 seconds, I lost my balance when I saw a child of a patient whose older mother told that his father was apprehended in a bomb blast. And I thought for once that, shall we give this child the benefit of public money? We were struggling to make his treatment, and it occurred to me after a while that this child and the children who died in the bomb blast are suffering from the same disease. That is the hatred for humanity. So day in, day out, we decide for them, we live with them, we breathe with our patients. The entire range of emotion that life has to offer is on display almost every day. How can anyone escape? The canvas of medical treatment in India is colored with rich mosaic background of human stoicism, dignities, suffering, sacrifice, and human follies. These are the presents that I receive for my patients. There is no time for us to discuss God. I do not know why they do this to me, but apparently maybe we are connecting at a little deeper level. And very, very poignant is the third one, which a Muslim patient, poor Muslim patient, insisted on giving me the idols of Hindu gods for prayer. And one insisted on taking my future, judging my future. In India, you know, the mystic and the mundane are inexorably intertwined, and you don't know where one stops and the other begins. This is the lowest point of my career, where a coarctation dilatation, a painless dissection, we failed to pick up, and the patient died the next morning. And the father embraced me and said, Dr. Saab, you did your best. And I could not console myself. In India, the modern medicine is adding another disease, another dimension to disease. We have old diseases, terrible to look after. We have new diseases coming up, but we have a third bigger monster than both these two. It is little less in pediatric cardiology, but it might grow. And if you are off our guard, it could become more. I think we must consciously see to it that the distrust does not develop. Envy to our colleagues does not creep in our pediatric cardiac practice, and we keep this monster away. If I have a wish list in my practice, I would say, how can we decrease the congenital heart disease? It is my considered opinion that consanguinity, I have seen time and again, complexity of congenital heart disease more in consanguinity issues. Gender parity in India leaves much to be desired. A girl child really fares much worse. Access, equity, and technical excellence. Without that, there is no success in pediatric cardiac care. The practice of clinical audit is really very needed in our country as such. I wish we could leverage our collective wisdom more than what we have been doing in the past. I think coming together is beginning, staying together is success, they say, and working together is progress. I think Pediatric Cardiac Society has done well till the first two, and it's the time now to leverage our success and go for progress and tend to do better on this. I do wish that our heroes were more accessible. More of them could have been in private sector. What about future? Are we going for default future, or will we try and shape our destiny? To me, there are very many aspects to this question, but and it has been said that if the same progress continue, we might overtake US and UK. And as long as our human development indices, our financial things will improve, pediatric cardiology will improve. I think before that, it is going to be difficult. No matter what systems we talk, we need to have development, and then only we can probably improve pediatric cardiology. One can think of it in many ways, but to me, if you want to improve systems, think of this. Even though it's a Chinese proverb, we don't mind importing that, that if you're planning for 1 year, grow rice. If you're planning for 20 years, grow trees. But if you're planning for centuries, grow men. We need men of character. We need men who connect with their countrymen. And we need people who think quality, who think education, who think India. Friends, pediatric cardiac practice in India is consuming, challenging, and rewarding. But let me remind you, not many professionals throughout the world have their hands as full as ours. So make hay while the sun shines, albeit too brightly. We should be patient-centered, neither anatomy-centered nor technology-centered. Our patient stoicism demands more and deeper commitment from us. We should think globally, but act locally. And there is yet too much pending work for us. I thank you for your patient hearing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.